I'm Bruce Gordon, author of the book The Spirit of Attack. In 1969, I volunteered for combat in Vietnam. I left the F-106 in Korea and went to Luke Air Force Base in Arizona to check out in the F-100. First, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the F-100 as a fighter, and then I'll tell you about the fighter tactics I used in a practice dogfight against my instructor at Luke. I took this photo of my wingman as we climbed out on a combat mission in Vietnam. From the weapons he's carrying, we can tell that we were headed for targets that were in the lowland areas of Vietnam that were marshy, and we were aiming at troops that were not dug in. The long pipe extending from the nose of the aircraft was a pitot boom. This was just a pipe where the air ramming into the end of it ran an instrument in the cockpit and told us how fast we were going. Almost every aircraft has a pitot boom. We had 4 20mm cannons with 1,600 rounds of ammo. Compare that to the F-4 that had only 640 rounds of ammo. You can see a 3-foot pipe extending from a 500-pound bomb, one of 4 that we carried. The pipe was called a fuse extender, and it would hit the ground first and set the bomb off 3 feet in the air so it didn't waste its energy throwing mud around. The large object underneath the wing is not a bomb, but is a 275-gallon fuel tank. We carried 2 of these on almost every mission. At Luke, we learned to fly the F-100. We learned to drop bombs. We learned to strafe with those 4 20mm cannons that were mounted right under our feet so that when we fired those guns, our feet would dance on the rudder pedals from the shock waves of the guns. We had 1,600 rounds of ammunition. We could do a lot of strafing. Finally, we went into aerial combat tactics. Aerial combat tactics started with 2 two-seat F-100s, each with an instructor and a student, and they taught the student how the aircraft would perform under maximum G conditions. The next day, we were to go up with 1 student against his instructor in the single-seat F-100s, and that's when it got interesting. I walked into the briefing room and sat down with my instructor. He got out my folder and looked at it, and he said, "I see you've been an instructor in aerial combat tactics in the F-106. "Yes, sir," I said. He said, "Do you think you're pretty good?" I said, "Yes, sir, I think I'm pretty good." He said, "Okay, we'll test that. We'll forget all the formalities." He says, "We'll take off together and fly in formation out to the Twin Buttes at 20,000 feet. Then we'll turn in opposite directions and fly for 1 minute, then turn back on each other, still at 20,000 feet. When we see each other and each has the other in sight, we'll call tally-ho, and then fights on, and may the best man win. Any questions?" I said, "No, sir. No questions. This will be fun." As I walked out to my plane, I thought about the coming battle. The 2 airplanes were identical, so there was no way to out-turn him or out-climb him or anything else. I'd have to beat him psychologically. Now, I knew that most fighter pilots like to maintain their altitude if they can, because altitude is always an advantage. so he would try to hold his altitude. What would happen if I went low? And would he hold his altitude? How could I get that to play in my favor? We went out to our planes, started our engines, taxied out, took off, flew out to 20,000 feet at the Twin Buttes. We split up and went out in different directions. Then we turned in till we could see each other, called tally-ho, fights on. I've got to use my hands for this. I'm the guy over here. We called fights on, and I started descending rapidly. And as I suspected, he did not. He decided to hold his altitude. He could hold his altitude, and he came in, and I started pulling up hard, lighting my afterburner, and he had more speed than I did because I'm starting to pull straight up, and he was lighting his afterburner to pull up. But at this point, realized that I am now 90 degrees turned toward his tail. The battle has just begun, and I've already got him by 90 degrees. Now, with his afterburner lit, he's pulling up, and sure, he has more energy than I do, and but now he's going faster. And I drop in behind him. Now, as I come down, I'm on his tail, and he dove toward the ground. He twisted and turned, but he couldn't get away from me. I closed in and got some good gun camera pictures of his tail. We joined up and flew back together to Luke. We landed, taxied in, parked our planes, got in, and walked into the briefing room. He didn't say anything. He got out the exam sheet, looked at it, took out his pencil, and wrote on it, "Had the instructor's ass," dropped the paper and his pencil, and walked out. It was one of the greatest days of my Air Force career.